welcome back to Marie's Memoirs. Today, oh my goodness, this conversation is going to be incredibly insightful, and especially if you are a parent, a carer, or you're a fabulous auntie or uncle, these are the kind of things that you would need to be looking into. We're going to be exploring child exploitation and trafficking and grooming and all of those things. So here with me today, I have the founder of Recoil Youth, which is a Birmingham-based youth project. And the founder is Aunika Blake, who is with me today. She is a JNC qualified youth and community worker. Hey girl!
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's an absolute pleasure. I was in a conversation, I was listening to a discussion the other day about child trafficking, and some of the things that were mentioned were quite alarming. And because you was on the panel, I was like, I would love to spread that awareness, because there's so much things that are happening that we're not privy to, you know? So where I wanted to start actually was, what exactly is child exploitation? Like, what is that?
Okay. So before I go into what is child exploitation, what I want you to do for me, if you could, is describe yourself as a teenager in 3 words. So 3 things that describes you as a teenager.
Oh, she's giving me work. Okay.
Yeah. If I'm gonna work, you're gonna work too. Yeah, one.
Okay. So 3 things that describe me as a teenager: vibrant, loud, and confident.
Excellent, thank you. And kind of think of those 3 things as I'm going through, like as we're discussing, as we're going forward and stuff. Okay, so what is child exploitation, and then what ages can we expect to like kind of see this in as well? So I would say for child exploitation and what ages you're seeing, anyone under 18. We can kind of say that the target age is around teenage ages, but anyone under 18 can be exploited. And I'll explain that as I go to explain what type of exploitation there is. So you have child exploitation, which I describe as a form of modern day slavery. And what we do have now in the UK is a Modern Day Slavery Act to protect people in the UK from being exploited. So it's a type of modern day slavery. So the different types of child exploitation that you can get is sexual exploitation, criminal exploitation. You can be forced into marriage. You can be domestic servitude. So domestic servitude is like being a helper in the house, being told what to do in the house. So you're being like the maid in that house. So right. Domestic servitude. Forced labor, so it'll be like to be working anywhere but basically not getting paid, or getting paid really minimum. And another type of exploitation there is like benefit claiming, illegal adoption and private fostering. So sometimes when a child will go into a next family and they use it to claim benefits and so on. So that can be another form of exploitation. Oh, wow. So that's why I say it can be anyone under 18, because if you're a baby and you're going into getting benefit claims and you don't know that you're being exploited and you're a baby, so I'll say any age.
Wow.
Exploited. Yeah, so there's different types. So what we're going to focus on is more around criminal exploitation and around sexual exploitation. So there might be some tag words that you might have heard, like CSC or CCE. So those are the tag words that we use to describe child sexual exploitation, CSE, and child criminal exploitation, CCE. So I can give you the definitions of those now. So the Department of England definition for child criminal exploitation. So this occurs when an individual or a group takes advantage of the imbalance of power to coerce, control, manipulate, or deceive a child or young person under the age of 18. The victim may have been criminally exploited, even if the activities appear to be consensual. The child criminal exploitation doesn't always involve physical contact. It can occur through the use of technology. So the same will be for sexual exploitation. So it's a form of child sexual abuse, Again, it occurs when the individual or group takes advantage of the imbalance of power to coerce, manipulate, deceive a child. For the reason they're doing it is for the child to be involved in sexual activity. But what the Department of England have put in their definition is that in the exchange of something, the victim needs or wants. So sometimes I disagree with that, because not all the time the victim's going to want something, or the time that they get given something, but it's not the fact that they wanted it. So it might be a case that they've been sexually exploited, and the perpetrator, the abuser, gave the young person £10 afterwards. And then the fact that they take that £10 and go and spend it and use it doesn't necessarily mean that they wanted it. They might have just took it because they were just given it, and they didn't think if I gave it back, it might be, I might be in worse trouble if I gave it back, kind of thing. So not all the time they're going to actually want something in return when they are being abused. They see it as it's just being abused. So that's that. So I'm going to go through a few other of the buzzwords that you might hear around, like trafficking.
Yeah.
So trafficking, this involves recruitment, transportation, transfer or movement of a person for the purpose of exploitation.
Like county lines?
Yeah.
What about those?
I'm going to come on to that.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
So you can have internal trafficking, so into the UK and out of the UK. And you can have internal trafficking, so international trafficking, should I say, into the UK and out of the UK, and internal trafficking. This is more when we talk about county lines. So internal trafficking is across cities and countries within the UK, and this can be from street to street, from town to town, and from country to country. But also, because we have trafficking laws, so for us to kind of prosecute prosecute abusers in court, sometimes we have to use the trafficking laws in like Sexual Abuses Act. So it can be from trafficking from a bedroom to bedroom. So if your intent is to make that young person be sexually abused and you're moving them to do that, then you're trafficking that child. So it doesn't have to be like long distance. It's the intent of moving that child to do that. So that's what trafficking is. So grooming is another word that we use. So the word grooming is used to describe the process that abusive adults use to trick a child or young person into believing that they are trustworthy, and that they eventually exploit the young person. But I don't like to use the word grooming too often, because we can actually groom for the positive. Like you have horse groomers, they're called horse groomers, and they groom horses' hairs and stuff. And also we groom as parents, we groom as carers, we groom as people who actually care for young people, because we want young people to be the best that they can be. So we will teach them things in the intent that they become the best version of them that they can be. So using the word grooming, try and put more to it instead of just saying the young person was groomed. Say groomed for what? What were they groomed for? Right. So when you use the word grooming, put more to that sentence.
So continuing with the different type of words that you might hear that are involved in exploitation. So the word consent. So consent is if a person agrees by choice and they have the freedom and the capacity to make that choice.
Right.
So in times, young people don't have the freedom and the capacity. The freedom can be that they're underage, it's against the law, they don't have the freedom to make that choice. And the capacity can be the fact that they're under the influence of drugs, they're under the influence of alcohol, their capacity is distorted, so they're not able to make that actual consent to it. And another one, young people can't consent to their own abuse. They're getting abused and you can't consent to that. So that just rules it out altogether. As we mentioned before, counting lines. So this is criminal distribution of drugs. So from cities into next cities, smaller towns, into rural areas. Yeah. And it's the fact that they're using children and vulnerable people in the makeup of this. So they will use children because they see that they're less identified maybe when they're traveling to transport these drugs.
Yeah.
Young people are involved in this form of drug running, and I don't like the fact that they call it drug running, because that kind of desensitize the fact that it's a criminal activity and it's modern day slavery, and are often paid to go missing, and they can be subjected to be sexually exploited as well. So even though it's around the criminal aspect of it, there is some kind of sexual exploitation that can happen for these young people. So the fact that they might need to hide the drugs, so they might be plugging these type of drugs. So the word plug-in is when the young people are hiding the drugs on their body. So they will be sometimes inserting it into their anus. So if young people are learning to do this from someone else, that's sexual abuse. Or if another person is doing that, that's sexual abuse as well. So there is sometimes a crossover of criminal activities and then there's sexual abuse. And then what's difficult is sometimes when they put gender on it, so they'll see like boys will do the criminal stuff and girls will be sexually exploited, and then when boys are sexually exploited, they don't tend to speak up or come forward or recognize it as being sexual abuse, because of the way sometimes we put our gender bias on these kind of abuses. Let's go on to missing episodes, as I mentioned. So when a young person or an individual are not where they're meant to be or not where you presume them to be, and this is basically when you should report them missing to the police. So, and the police will call this a missing episode where they're not where they're meant to be.
With missing, okay, so with children, is it different? Because I thought that you can only kind of report someone as missing after 24 hours. Is that the same with minors?
No.
So
no.
Immediately,
as soon as they're not where as soon as they're not where you believe they're meant to be, sooner the better you report them missing.
Okay.
Because with adults, they do have their autonomy, they do have their own rights to go off and go places.
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of say, like 24 hours, they could have just gone somewhere and they're going to come back kind of thing. Right. But if they're vulnerable, like if you believe that they're going to commit suicide or they have dementia or there's some kind of vulnerability to that adult, then you wouldn't wait 24 hours because they're not where they're meant to be kind of thing.
So what about a regular teenager that's not vulnerable in that sense? They're just a normal teenager, but they haven't been picking up their calls. You should be reporting that straight away just in case, just to be safe.
Because their vulnerability is they're under 18, a child.
Okay.
That's their vulnerability.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So their vulnerability is they're a child, so they should be where they're meant to be, or you should know where your child is or the person that you're caring for.
Yeah.
So that's what missing episodes is, and I feel like we'll go further down and talk about what parents and carers can do, but missing episodes is a major part around exploitation as well. Another word is debt bondage. So this is where young people are told that the drugs are missing, or it's been stolen, or they've been set up and they've been jumped, or the drugs been stolen off them, and then they've got a debt that they have to pay back. So they're stuck in this exploitation. They're having to still do things for them. So they're stuck in a debt.
So, wow. Okay, so I'm assuming this happens sometimes. I don't know how regularly, but they could somebody could give a teenager some drugs to give to someone and set them up to take it away so that they are in debt to them. And obviously this child's going to be like, oh my goodness, like
exactly, and do anything to literally.
Oh wow, okay.
So going back to kind of like how the things that you described yourself as being younger, and if you was in that situation and you've been set up, and it's
you're gonna feel distraught because as a teenager, like you just want to, it's not people pleasing, but you want to help people, you want to support people, you want popularity. Everybody likes to be liked because you're finding yourself.
And you got the confidence to go back out there and to try get it back and to try and raise the money and to do all this. That's how you get stuck into that cycle.
Wow.
And you don't realize it happens.
Wow.
So it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one. But yeah, those are kind of what child exploitation is and at what ages it can affect.
Aunika, I genuinely did not realize there was so much to it. We are barely scratching the surface right now.
This is
barely scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Like, mate, just got me hot. Like, I feel stressed already.
Yeah,
no,
you want to do everything. Like, you feel like you want to, like, when you hear about it, you're like, rah, like, literally, I have to say the benefit. It's a lot.
It genuinely is, and it kind of like my heart gets a little bit heavy when I heard that first conversation about it, and even learning more about it now, I'm just like, good grief, man, this is what the youth of today are having to face, along with everything else.
You can empathize with it because you can see how you can get stuck into that situation.
Yes. Oh wow. Okay, so in regards, I'm letting this all sink in because
process it.
It's shocking information, and so I'm just letting that sink in calmly. In regards to figures for the UK, and for child exploitation cases in the UK, what's the percentage that they have documented that it happens for everybody and also for the Black community?
Okay, so one thing first, to actually get figures, we need to think about how are we going to get these figures. So it's got to be people that have been identified of either being trafficked or at the risk of being trafficked. So the people that are identified, usually it's because they want to get protection. So there's a mechanism called NRM, which is the National Referral Mechanism. Okay. And this is a protection kind of order kind of thing for young people, for when they get caught by the police, that they're recognized as being a trafficked child. So a person who can fill out this form is the police, social services, and other professionals that are in this industry can fill out this form to say this child is a trafficked individual. And then when they do get prosecuted, like when they get arrested by the police, they wouldn't be like prosecuted straight away kind of thing. Okay. So they're protected. So the figures that I've got for
just a quick question. You know how you said like a social worker would fill out that form? How would a social worker, like, how does that work? Like, how does a social worker know when a child is being trafficked? Like, what's that part? Like, how do you find those?
I will talk about that a bit further down, because when you say how can parents and care, I'm going to talk about how parents and carers can help a bit.
Perfect. Yeah.
So the figures that I have got, so 1 in 4 victims of modern slavery are children. The overall in the quarter of 2020, so the first quarter of 2020, 60%, 1,724 of potential victims claimed that they were exploited in the UK. So that's children.
Is that 60%?
60% claimed that they were exploited in the UK.
Wow.
So these are people that are being recognised under the NRM. So these are people that are filing that they're being exploited.
That's a very big figure, considering I can imagine how many go under the radar.
Well, this is what I'm saying. So during the first 2 quarters of 2020, referrals have remained high, with the total of 1,250 referrals for child criminal exploitation alone, and 79.2% being British nationals, because we need to think about children that do get trafficked into the UK to do child criminality as well. They will be put into the statistics also. So it was only 70 out of those children that identified as being trafficked, 79% were British national children. So to get some kind of figures on different races, so I found this difficult to find myself. The only time I've got different information on races is when I used to work as a return home interview worker. So when young people were reported missing, I used to go out and do the interviews with these young people to ask them how they were on their missing episode, what they got up to, and to let them know about the risk of exploitation. And if anything came out of that, I would put that, I would refer them on to something further, or make safeguarding referral on further for that young person.
Yeah. So if a young person goes missing and hopefully when they come back, then does a parent or carer they would have to report them missing for them to access the service? So if they don't report them missing, they won't be able to access this service to kind of explain about, okay, understood.
What happened.
Right.
Yes, excellent. So when I was on that service, I obviously went under a lot of training, and on one of the training I went on that, they told us about the safeguarding board, which is a group of professionals that are there to safeguard individuals, young people, to protect us. And they have a website. So we have a Birmingham local safeguarding website, and they used to post quarterly the different statistics of child exploitation. But since 2017-18, it kind of stopped. But I feel like that was because we started to recognise criminal exploitation, because that's when they were only posting statistics around sexual exploitation. And also they kind of stopped because they were posting statistics of people that was at risk. And it's like, these are only people that have been referred to the service, that are known to social services. So could be children are at risk because they're just children. So having these figures, it's just saying these people are just being identified through social services. So out of those figures in 2016, there was 273 young people at risk. So 273 referrals went into children's services to say that children are being exploited just in Birmingham. This is Birmingham local figures.
Does each council have their own, like would Walsall have their own? And okay.
Yeah, so each council by law should have their own local authority of safeguarding board, and they should obviously have their own protocols and ways that they deal with exploitation and safeguarding.
Is this information freely available on the internet if we wanted to search? Okay.
Well, I just tried to find it now, my previous ones, but it's not there now. Okay. But luckily, when I was doing my research and all my dissertations, I still got all my figures and facts. But now I would say the only way you'll be able to get personal figures around race and gender, I say we'll have to be working with the police, have a close connection with the police and social services. You will have to be a professional working within those kind of institutes to be able to get those figures. But from the figures that I got from 2016, which I believe now will be higher, and this is only for sexual exploitation as well, this ain't for criminal exploitation. So we had 273 young people at risk, and out of them 221 were female, so 81% were female and only 19% male.
Oh wow.
So males were still getting identified, but the switch in that was like, the gap in that is disgusting. So you'll know now it's a lot more, you'll know that males are getting exploited, but they're just not getting identified. So we'll talk a bit more about how sometimes they will just get criminalized rather than being safeguarded in this situation. So it's about recognizing the vulnerability of that child. Looking at, hold on, I did have the races and stuff. Let me just get it back up.
I'm still shocked at the amount of girls compared to boys, females compared to males. Like that's shocking. I'm not surprised, but it's still, those figures are shocking.
Yes.
Like, wow.
In Birmingham, when I looked at the difference between the races, I concentrated on Black Caribbean. And Black Caribbean, when we was looking at risk, it risen by 1.5%. Mixed white and Black Caribbean raised by 5%, and mixed white and Asian raised by 5.5%. I think the reason why I took those figures because those were the only ethnic groups that risen of being identified as being at risk, but the other ones remained the same. So there were still high numbers of white people being identified, but these were the ones that were being increased. So I'm thinking they were being recognized more, which I thought was a positive for once. Even though it's a negative that they're being identified, but it's a positive that they were risen, like we recognize more in these ethnic groups. Yeah. So those are unfortunately the only statistics that I have around this. We have so much information of how to tackle it or what it is, but the actual impact and what's going on out there, it's kind of hidden. And I feel like don't know if it's hidden for a reason, but it should be made more widely available to the impact that it is, because the only reason we know about the impact is through the media and the news, which it can be damaging. So we do need those figures and statistics.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that, especially literally just having the transparency of, I can go online and get updated figures of, okay, what's actually happening. And then the next year, you know, has it rose, has it declined, what's happening? And if that's something that your heart is in, then at least you know, like, okay, cool, maybe more work needs to be done according to these figures. So I totally agree with that. I
feel like there's something I might need to start campaigning about now. Like, the everyday common people need to know what's going on. Like,
no, it's so true. Like, unless you're in that environment as a social worker, a youth worker, a community leader, a teacher, unless you are in that environment, you probably don't have a clue on what's happening. Like, I only learned about what county lines were probably like a year and a half ago. Yeah. Apart from that, I had no clue that these things were happening, because I'm not based, I don't work closely with youth. I'm not a youth worker, so I don't understand the ins and outs of stuff that happens at that age in today's society. So that's crazy. So, like, are there any kind of signs? Because when we're talking about children being, of course, they're vulnerable because they're children anyway, because they're still trying to figure out a lot of different things in life. But are there any signs that, in particular, that we might miss in children that makes them vulnerable? For example, one of the things that I heard mentioned before was the lack of diagnosis within the Black community for ADHD and autism, and then that leading to a lack of support in inclusivity for that, because then it's kind of like they don't know how to support this individual, and then they just get kind of boxed in the naughty box, and then it's like your school life, you kind of go over there because you know, is that like
that's what you're describing there was literally the school to prison pipeline. Like, that is literally a thing.
That's actually a thing.
Yeah, school to prison pipeline. So when you're in school, and because when you think about let's talk about Black boys, let's talk about Black Caribbean boys, let's talk about them in primary school. So majority of the time in primary school, it's not too bad. They're managing okay in primary school. It's when they get to secondary school now, sometimes when they have got disabilities or learning difficulties and it's not diagnosed, this is when you start to see the pressure. This is when you start to see them probably acting out in a different way because they're not able to take in information or be educated in a way that's suited for them. So this is when they start to mess about. Or it could be a thing that they're just acting the same as their white counterparts, but because they stand out more, they will get targeted more, so they will get the suspension, the exclusion, and so on more. So when that all is happening to a young person, when they get expelled in secondary school, they get put into something called a PRU, which is a pupil refer unit. So it's basically meant to be another education provider where young people will go there to do, sometimes try and get them to do like a level 1, level 2 in the numeracy and literacy, try and get them to do some kind of vocational course so they can get started into life. It's meant to be some kind of interim in between school and college kind of thing. And most of the time those PRUs are the breeding ground for criminals, because that's where other abusers will come and see these vulnerable young people that have been kicked out of school, are displaying behavioral difficulties, and they would groom those young people to become the next criminals, and that's how they end up going into prison. Professionals, we see school as a safety net. As long as you can try and remain and keep your child in school as much as possible, it's a safety net. But also you can see how school can be a dangerous place for some individuals as well.
Oh, wow.
The sticky one. So that's something that can make young people vulnerable. So not being diagnosed with their learning difficulties in school, or if they are displaying behavioural issues, not looking at the wider picture, what's going on at home, what's going on for them in school, why are they displaying these difficulties, rather than just expelling them and then not giving them a chance.
Yeah.
So that's one type of vulnerability. There are a number of like warning signs that could suggest that a child is being at risk of being exploited or could be. So like we mentioned before, frequently going missing from home and from school, going out late, not returning till morning, being picked up in cars by unknown adults, and different taxis and stuff, so on. Significant older boyfriend, girlfriend, friends, just inappropriate adult relationships, unexplained money, possessions, mobile phone credit, new mobile phone, etc. Changing their behavior, so they might become more aggressive, they might become more secretive, more withdrawn, more like just literally a change of behavior for that child. Increase of increase of mobile phone use and internet use, involvement in criminal activity, and regularly going out, drugs taking, and alcohol. But what we need to understand, this could be normal teenage risk-taking activities as well. So when we reflect back to sometimes when we was teenagers and our friends and peers around us, they might be getting into these activities with their peers, but not technically being exploited by an older adult or by someone who should know better. So these could be things that happen with young people. So it's about being vigilant about these things. So when they do come back in the morning, what kind of story do they tell? Can you check up on that story? Did they say they spent the night at their friends and so on? Can you follow through on that story to make sure that they definitely did stay there? Do you know these children's parents, mums and stuff? So it's the typical sometimes vulnerabilities that teenagers can go through, but it's being vigilant about these and not just ticking it off as that's just normal teenage behavior. They'll come back around okay, but it's being vigilant about it.
So in regards to, because you mentioned quite a few things there that parents should be looking out for with their child on many different aspects, like you said, like not asking for money anymore, not needing any money anymore, and then also having money all of a sudden, and new garments, new phones, etc., and stuff like that. How can we deter, like as parents, carers, and how can we deter this from happening? Are there any kind of like tips where we can say, okay, if you feel your child or the child you're caring for, it may be at risk, what can they do?
First thing I would say, the basics you can do is talk to someone. There's a lot of times parents and carers are going through this situation, or they feel it's this situation and just holding it to themselves and not talking to anyone about it. It's talking to someone you can trust. That's the first thing I recommend, because just talking to someone else can probably make it's like counsel. You're trying to make up a plan, you're trying to think of a solution. So just talking to someone about it is the first step. The second step, I would say, is talk to professionals. So the second step is when they go in missing, when you suspect them of when they're going missing, is reporting them missing to the police. It can be difficult, it can be tiresome, especially if they go missing regularly and you have to do it regularly. But it's making sure you do it each and every time, because it's a vulnerable child. It's a child which is vulnerable, and when they're reported missing, it flags up like that this child is vulnerable. Like it needs to be flagged up that this child is vulnerable, and more resources and more stuff will get put in to help protect this child. So it's good to report them missing. So with that, talking to professionals, it's talking to children services. So when I said before, how do children's services know? This is when you make a referral to children's services to say your child is at risk from exploitation. So you have a duty to safeguard your child by making this referral to children's services to say your child is at risk of exploitation. So when you're doing that, the children's services, they have meetings within the children's services that are child protection meetings. meetings with the police, with other professionals like health professionals, teachers, all these other professionals that work with children, to think of how can we disrupt this exploitation, how can we protect this young person, how can we prosecute the abuser, and how can we offer support further for this child to become to recover from the exploitation that they've been through. So it's good to work with children's services because they have the powers, the money, the funding, and all they should have all the resources to help your child on the journey to recovery. Another people that you should talk to and help are charities and community groups. So I would say that can be a stepping stone before professionals sometimes, just to make yourself more familiar with the terms and the stuff that you should be doing, like how we're having conversations now. So it's going back and looking at podcasts and looking on people's Instagram pages to see what information and stuff you can get. So it's looking at the charities, looking at the leaders in the communities and trying to get some and talking to them about your situation, and sometimes they can point you in the right direction as well. So I say what can you do to help is talk, and it's knowing who to talk to. I say that's what I can say. And another thing to look at is trying to analyze the push and pull factors. So push and pull is when so where the child lives in the house, so what's pulling them out the house into exploitation, and what's pushing them out the house into exploitation. So some of the factors that can be pushing them into exploitation could be history of abuse, it could be bullying, it could be family difficulties, it could be neglect, it could be parental issues, substance misuse, homelessness, school difficulties, learning difficulties, disabilities, and the child is a looked after child, which means they're in care. So these are some of the factors that could happen for the child internally, like in the home, that could push them into exploitation. So if you're a parent and you're aware of that the child has suffered abuse, what have you done to help that child go through and overcome that abuse? Are you a parent that you're having difficulties with your partner? How do you navigate that relationship in front of your child? So there's certain things in the home that you can stop from pushing the child into exploitation. There's some things that obviously not everything happens in the home, not all the difficulties happen in the home. It could be things that pull the child into exploitation. So it could be a safe person, safe in quotation marks, someone that they believe is safe, boyfriend or girlfriend, grooming them into it. Could be a friend or someone that they confided in, like their peers, bringing them into it. It could be that they're trying to get some status kind of thing, and like to be known kind of thing in their community. They don't want to follow rules, like they just go off and no rules against and consequent. They feel like there's no consequences to what they're doing. They break rules. Could be a sense of belonging, and a sense of acceptance, money, drugs, alcohol, gifts, a place to stay, removal from a difficult home life, and to feel loved and cared for. These are just some of the factors. And one other one that I feel like would be interesting to discuss is drill music, because it could be sometimes a discussion that
not drill, honey.
I said
I've
drill.
heard all that music, and you know what? It's
trap.
That's like, it's all that new school rap that it is UK based at the moment, isn't it? But it is, you know.
Well, so I would say that can be a pull factor as well, because it's the glamorization of criminal activity. So we do watch things for adult entertainment purposes. Like, we need to tell to our young people, this is adult entertainment. Fair enough, some of the young people might have true stories behind some of these things that might have happened, but you need to see it as entertainment and not as
an actual lifestyle. It's entertainment. Entertainment. My thing is, it's just like half of the time, the majority of successful rappers over in the US, they have got lawyers working underneath them. They've got a business deal. They've got accountants. They've got somebody who's saying, right, this is what you should be doing. This is what you should do. They've got lawyers. They've got everything. So they can rap about whatever they want to rap about, but they're going home to their nice house because they have a good job right now and they've got plenty of opportunities awaiting them. And they can, and because everyone's buying their music because they like the sound of it or the rapping or whatever, the skill, the talent, but they're also not only buying into the music, they're buying into the message.
Yeah.
And when you buy into the message and you are if you've got a young mind, I wouldn't say young minds, but if you're easy to be influenced and you listen to that music and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this to a girl and I'm going to do this to a guy. And it's just crazy. And it's really bringing back to remembrance. That is so important. It's entertainment. Music is entertainment. It's therapy for the right reasons and it can be used depending on how you understand that music you listen to. But reminding them that it's entertainment.
Because the debate is, should we ban it? I don't say we shouldn't ban it. We just need to educate them that it's entertainment. Because there's what I like to say to young people, especially around porn as well, because we do talk about sexual exploitation. So sometimes groomers or abusers will use porn as a way to just desensitize anything that happens to them, or just desensitize being in an adult environment, like to say, oh, we're watching porn, everything's cool here, you're with the adults kind of thing. So sometimes I would say to young people, watching porn can't teach you about sex. It's not there to teach you about sex. It's for an individual or two consenting adults to watch together for entertainment purposes if they choose to do that. And then I would tell them, you don't learn to drive by watching Fast and Furious. It's entertainment. So why would you learn to... Yeah, exactly. So why would you learn sex from porn or how to be a roadman from watching these films and these music videos? It's just entertainment. This is how we need to. It
shows how powerful music is and the things that we watch, because everything that you take in, it has to come out. If you're listening to constant aggressive music, you're probably going to have some kind of aggression building up at some point, maybe, but it works for people. And you got to be careful, especially when you're not really, you haven't grown, you don't know what you want in life, you haven't really gone outside of the school environment. Like there's a lot out there, but this ain't it. This right here, this ain't it. And so that's such a good point.
But you just get sucked into it easily. So I say that's one of the biggest pull factors, which ain't really mentioned too often. It's just looked at as negative, but we need to look at what it does. It kind of pulls young people to thinking it's this desensitize the stuff to make it seem it's a susceptible lifestyle when it is not. It's criminal activity.
Wow.
Yeah.
So so in regards to like trafficking and how they're are there any kind of like hotspots for physical or online trafficking that parents should be aware of?
So when we're looking at hotspots, it could be at school, it could be your local parks, it could be in your home, online, because like we just mentioned, the push and pull factors. The grooming can happen anywhere. It can literally happen anywhere. It could be happening in your home while the young person is sitting there on their phone and they're getting DMs some person that they shouldn't be talking to off their social media, and you're thinking they're just sitting there, everything's calm happening, but they're getting groomed right in front of you. So it can happen anywhere. And I'm not going to start reading off Snapchat and TikTok and Northfield history and different areas and Minecraft and Roadblocks as the games and all these things where young people are at, because young people are always going to be at a different place, at a different thing that's going to pop up and become available. Basically, anywhere where young people are at is a hotspot to be groomed. That's just basically it. Anywhere where young people are at. So how I would say to tackle this is looking at contextual safeguarding. So contextual safeguarding is an approach to understanding and responding to a young person's experiences of significant harm beyond their families. So contextual safeguarding seeks to identify and respond to harm and abuse posed to young people outside of their home, either from adults or other young people. So when talking to professionals, if you mention the word contextual safeguarding and you're thinking that your child is being abused and exploited, they will start to look at the different areas of that young person's life. What is school like for that young person? What is like going to the local park like for that young person? What's it like going to their local activity for that young person, or just being on the internet? What's it like being on the internet for a young person? What kind of algorithms is coming through their phone and stuff? So these are kind of things that you need to look at as a wider picture when you're looking at the reasons of how that young person got exploited, or how to stop the young person from getting exploited and to get them away from that. So yeah, there isn't any specific hotspots, but it's just looking at the different areas of the child's life and how they can be exploited.
Yeah, and then it goes back to what you said previously about just genuinely being vigilant in how they change of behavior, what they're doing, how they're doing things. Yeah. Now you have to have an interest in your child. Like it's kind of probably sad enough for like some parents and carers, especially when they reach that teenage age when they themselves don't want to engage with you. But you're gonna have to be that parent you're gonna have to be that annoying parent to just be kind of honest. No, it's true. Because a lot of us, like in our teenage years, we knew what we was up to in our teenage years. It was either great or just naughty or whatever, but we've grown from that. And so it's just, it's so much more dangerous now. So much more dangerous. There's so many different ways to access the children. There's so many different ways to access them. So yeah, I definitely agree. Having those, having open communication.
Yes.
And being vigilant and just making sure that you literally just being vigilant, pay attention and take interest in your child. What would a parent do if like the child doesn't really, like the teenager doesn't really want to talk to them, or the conversation's awkward? Like how would a parent, and I know we're going to wrap up very soon in a couple of minutes, but as a parent, like, because I've heard I've got friends with children, and when it comes to teenagers, that's a different kettle of fish. It's a completely different ball game. So if the teenager is a little bit like, I don't want to talk to you, or they don't really conversate, like you'll get a grunt. Do you want breakfast? Like that kind of thing. What should a parent do? I don't know if you've got any ideas on that, but
just letting them know that you're always there and available for them to talk to, and that they don't have to talk to you. Like just letting them know you're there and that they don't have to talk to you. Let them know that there's other people that they're available to talk to them. Find out if you can their trusted adult, their trusted individual. Who do they look up to? Who's their kind of like mentor or mentoree kind of thing? Because they might have someone at their school that's a supply teacher or a teacher helper, or there could be someone in that young person's life that they feel more comfortable to talk to. So just let them know.
Do you think it would be a good idea if you was a parent and your communication with your teenage child isn't the best right now? Do you think it would be a good idea to kind of like reach out to their teacher to see if they can assign them to a mentor to have like, you're going to have a 30-minute talk with this person, just to talk and just say what's on your mind and blah blah, and see if they want to pick someone, but they have to pick someone and just say it's because of you just need to do it because they have to follow adults at the end of the day in the schooling environment. Would that be a good idea?
That is an amazing idea. It's just getting the child to talk, and it's giving that child the competence to be able to express their feelings and to someone that they trust. Like you said, let them pick who they want to talk to. Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. And it's giving them responsibility of you starting to build them as the adult that they should be. You need them to start reflecting on their emotions, reflecting on how they think, taking responsibility about that. So that is a good thing to do. Well done.
Thank you, because I was just like, if I had a child, what would I do to kind of like navigate this space if they did not want to talk to me? I'd have to go the back route and do that. So it's
definitely. And like you're saying, you'll keep doing what you can. You might not be able to do things directly, but do as much as you can, even if it's indirectly, like you said.
That is so important. I'm so happy. Aunika, I have learned so much today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Just in closing, where can, if parents wanted to learn more about child trafficking or just hints and tips, or reach out to someone or an organization, where can they learn more?
So to make it a bit more for the Black community, I would say Recoil Youth website. So I've got information of what child exploitation is and a bit more information around safeguarding. Okay. And if you look on my socials, I follow a lot of amazing organizations that also explain further, that are Black community owned organizations that explain further what exploitation is. And then we have the national services that are for everyone. We have NSPCC, the Children's Society, and Bernardo's, if you Google them.
Oh my goodness. I genuinely thank you so much for coming on. I'm probably going to pull you in at some point again to discuss something.
Let's do this.
Because my thing is, it's just like, I know that it's just, we just want to make sure that we give the awareness, we provide the education, provide the resources. Those who want to listen and learn, come. The information's here. Let's learn together and let's grow as a community. Let's do better. We got this. Like, let's go. Like, I'm definitely going to have you back to speak, probably in a little bit more detail on a couple other things, depending on the feedback that I get from today, and from this conversation. So thank you so much, Aunika.
You're welcome, and thank you for doing this, for putting the community out there and having them in your mind, and to getting the discussions out there. You're G, like, co-type you.
No, thank you so much. I'm definitely going to continue. It's so important, and oh my gosh, thank you.